Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So I think this episode is pretty much overdue. I've known Joe for a period of time, and through his partner Phil. We've been talking offline, online, and finally today we have an opportunity to kind of present to the world his new platform and talk a little bit more about him, like how did he even become a developer and getting to the space of SaaS-based platforms. So you guys know I like to name whoever I'm going to name a particular nickname, and today's nickname for Joe is going to be the Pipeline Boss. So we're going to talk about his platform and we're going to talk a little bit more about him. So the floor is yours, Joe. Tell the audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
Um, well, I started several small businesses. I've always kind of had the entrepreneur spirit about me. I've actually worked at the first text message startup. And basically we would have been Twilio if we would have been 2 years later. So I got to manage accounts for some of the biggest companies in the world there. And somehow it all kind of like came back full circle later on in life where I got back into technology. But I don't know, I've always had like a love for technology because there's just so much you can do within it. It's ever changing. You're always kind of pivoting and making new things and creating things, and it's never the same day after day, which is what I love. And so throughout my years, it just kind of led me through to this because I would usually get bored with the business after so long. And so I just moved into creating SaaS, and I love it.
So like let's just talk about you like historically. I mean, obviously you said you've been a long time entrepreneur and like prime example, I've done my due diligence and like I want to talk about. I'm not sure if it was like a podcast, if it was promotion business, but Kick It Tour. Let's talk about that. Like how did you come up with that concept, and are you still using what you learned from that platform in your SaaS models today?
Well, weirdly enough, yeah, no, that had nothing to do with any of this. Actually, it was very different structure. I just kind of felt more of a calling for that. So the Kick It Tour was basically we did concerts for raising money for nonprofits in the mental health substance abuse space, and we really wanted to make a difference mainly through the state of Ohio. And through that venture, we helped thousands of people get into treatment. We helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for different nonprofits in the space. And but I mean, I don't know. For a while, I was just working for a company, and then I ended up just getting the vision to start Kick It Tour, and that like reignited the passion for entrepreneurship. As that thing kind of wound down, is kind of where I started moving towards the SaaS space.
Hmm. But I mean, even with that, I mean, I'm just building like the Legos of your legacy and who you are. There was a lot of networking that had to be done in that model for you to kind of understand what networking should really look like and how to communicate and how to make connections. Is that not right?
For sure, for sure. Everything from your press side of it, where we made national news,
Mhm.
all the way to the nonprofits were in the space, the top speakers, actors, musicians. So we had people from different TV shows and musicians that had pretty great selling albums that had came out, all the way to local musicians. Yeah, and it was just a ton of networking to really pull off these events, but it was an absolute blast.
All right, so let's just keep time traveling back, right? Because I really want to establish that, like you're building SaaS platform, you're building it from you've had experience in multiple different areas of expertise, so it kind of gives you a leg up, right? You also worked in reality TV for a minute, so I want you to kind of like talk about that. Like, how did that, come into fruition as well?
So I worked with a few different companies that were actually creating reality TV shows, and I kind of helped them pull in the concept of it, as well as pull in some of the players for it, within like different actors and things that
Mhm.
did it. So basically, I just kind of helped them put that together and kind of get to the pitch. Which, if you rewind back to the text message marketing days, that's kind of some of the stuff that we were into there. So I kind of learned through one company multiple things,
Mhm.
um, because some of our people there were some of the biggest agents in the world, were like some of our board members.
Hmm. And like this, just speed it up a little bit to like 2017. You also kind of created your first radio show, right? And it was called Sober for Life Radio. So obviously, like again, I'm building these building blocks. I want you to talk about like why did you get into like the radio space, and are you using anything from that now?
So that's actually not my venture. That's actually something that I was part of. But that was an interesting venture. I just kind of worked with the guy that created it. He was really kind of tied it to the Kick It tour, what we were doing back then. But I kind of helped him build up his listing where I was bringing in different artists, celebrities, and things to speak on the show, which then grew his audience. And now he's actually moved out of not just the sober space, but created an online radio station that now is self-sufficient. He actually makes all his money off of it. But yeah, it was just one of the other ventures that I kind of helped grow.
It's really cool. So, I mean, it was one of those videos that I think you posted. It was on Kick It Tour back in June 2015. And you said there's these three aspects of entrepreneurism that people are usually faced with. And if they don't conquer them, then obviously they'll face failure. So, one of them, I think you just established, which is knowledge. Like you have a lot of knowledge in multiple different areas of expertise. So, by having that knowledge, it kind of removes the fear. So, lastly, the third thing that you had said on that video was about financing. So, I want you to kind of talk about, are you more so building these platforms from grassroots? Are you self-funding it? Are you having equity? Like, how are you getting the capital to build these platforms?
So that's kind of an interesting story. So the average consensus for most SaaS startups is you start your venture, you go to an angel fund, you raise money, then you go to a VC and raise more money, and you lose all of your company. Through it, you also lose your decision-making process because they start taking over what decisions get made in your company. They can even fire you from your company. So we decided to go a different route with this. We use a self-funded model, but we brought down the cost exponentially on the operational cost, as well as brought down the development cost for it exponentially, where we can actually fund our own projects. And it's very profitable. Even when we offer things like lifetime deals, we can still be profitable as lifetime deals because the way that we reorchestrated it, because we didn't want to get caught up in the mix. And especially right now, and if you're a SaaS startup, you're probably seeing this, that you go after VC dollars and they're just not there. They're not funding companies. They're funding growth-based companies. They're not funding you before growth. And if you're not in the millions, the 5 million mark, they're not touching you. So you basically have this concept you built out and you're not going to get anywhere with it. We wanted to hold our own fate in our hands. So we created a model that actually makes it where we can continue to build new products over and over again, make them profitable, and be able to undercut the cost of the competition, as well as allowing us to control our own narrative.
I think obviously that's a phenomenal model. So it kind of goes into your platform, right? So let's talk about like Easy Pipeline for a minute. Obviously, you've had radio background, you've had TV background, you've had multiple different aspects of entrepreneurism. Why did you select to then create a platform that leverages LinkedIn outreach?
Well, to be honest, so we started a few different ventures through the SaaS journey, and through those ventures, I had to become a expert at LinkedIn. Multiple years within the LinkedIn space, but I was paying exponential amounts of money for the software for the space, and also I would get shut down all the time, and there was all these different problems that came along with these softwares. And we're 5,000 or 6,000 in before I ever really made a sale off of it. So it didn't really make sense for me. So as I learned through that cycle, and I just saw all these issues with the systems, I was like, I want to reinvent this, but I want to make it where it's actually affordable, where people can pick it up and not worry about the expense of getting to the point where you're actually making consistent revenue off the system. And so I decided to create this system. It took quite a bit of time to do it, where we could actually bring down the cost, where we can actually make that work and actually make it profitable. But we wanted to create a model that doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's easy to use. It's one that can solve problems for companies that never thought about using LinkedIn. And so we wanted to create this like super easy to use system. And that's kind of where Easy Pipeline came from. Is we went to development and then decided all the operational costs, how are things going to operate, and started putting all the figures together. And it's like, yeah, this thing's going to be dope. And that's kind of, then we rolled out the software, did a small test with it, and we got people loving it. Actually, you're even one of the people that actually has the software. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's definitely a phenomenal software. I mean, obviously you're in a space where there's a lot of different competitors, but the fact that, the easy part is leading into it, it just makes it simple. It's kind of like you kind of set it and forget it. So I want to kind of talk to you about like the journey. Let's say I'm on LinkedIn. I have a business. I have not been leveraging LinkedIn to its fullest capabilities. Now your platform comes into play. Like, what's the first thing that I'm going to do with it, and how is it going to help me grow my business?
Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to basically define your target audience, create messaging that would actually relate to that target audience in it, and then define your search for that target audience. So you would want to get it really very specific on who your individual person is, and that's something we actually did with you as well.
Yeah.
And basically, once you get that prime person in your messaging together, it's literally just build your prospect list and then let it go for 40, 50 days. Build your prospect list and let it go. So it's really amazing that once you get just your messaging and your audience together, it just goes. And then every day you're spending, 10 or 15 minutes a day with LinkedIn, but it's booking you meeting after meeting after meeting. I mean, at my top performance, I was with LinkedIn automation was getting 20 meetings a week just off an automation tool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real key thing about your software that I love, and the reason why I'm going to continue to use it and I'm recommending people to use it, is the fact that you're like articulating to that direct target audience. Like, I can go in there, and prime example, I think the list that we made together was, okay, I was looking for people that are into podcasting, not necessarily podcasters, but they're in the podcasting space. And we did the search and we got a list. And then I refined that search even more. So that way, my actual content that I'm delivering to them is highly relative to make the conversions a lot higher. So I'm talking to people that understand podcasting. They could look at my profile and see I'm a podcaster. The two and two adds up, and then by default, then they respond. So I have a higher conversion rate than just cold marketing everyone on LinkedIn. So I want to kind of talk about, like, was that something that you experienced firsthand, or was it a problem that you kept hearing that you wanted to solve?
It's a problem that I first experienced firsthand. Then as we kind of got into the development side of just building our own, I started hearing the same problem over and over again with people in the market. And so it's like, well, I mean, there's just this wide open space for it. And then we went into research, and you find that, most people are not utilizing systems like this for LinkedIn. And most of the smaller businesses, the solopreneurs and stuff, they can't even afford the systems in the market. And we just found that there's this wide open gap that needs to be filled.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the other thing too is, like, imagine, and I want the listener to like to take a time travel experience with us, right? Imagine if this platform existed at the dawn of LinkedIn, right? This is say, I'm just going to give it a date, 10 years. And imagine for 10 years, you have an opportunity to then reach out to 20 highly identified people that speak your language every week for 10 years. Where would your business be right now if you had access to that? And that's what we're talking about. I mean, obviously, from my experience using the platform, I had an opportunity to, my conversions are way higher as far as using LinkedIn, because again, people are talking about podcasting, and then we go into like a virtual coffee, we have one-on-one, and then at the end of that virtual coffee, at one, either I have a new friend, I have a new associate, a new business partner, or a new client. And those are the four things that help anything that you're doing on LinkedIn and social media grow. So based upon what I just said, I want you to kind of talk about, where are you trying to get the platform to go? Because I mean, obviously, you're past beta, you're releasing it, it works. What's next?
Well, what's next with the software is really we're going to be building out other social media with it. So we're going to have Facebook, we're going to have Instagram, we're going to have Twitter, and we're going to have all these different systems where you can have outreach on all the platforms all at once. Mm-hmm. And imagine what that could do for your business. I mean, it's going to be bringing businesses from 0 to 7 figures. I would guess within a year or two. I mean, it's going to really just increase the ability for small businesses to scale exponentially. And so that's really what we're looking at, is creating that. Also, I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the profile itself. Before you do this, you really got to have a stellar profile. Like when we went in this with you, your profile is already amazing. So we don't have to do anything with that, but you've got to make sure your pictures are on point. They're professional. Your personal picture, your headline for what you're doing, your messaging within your about section, and your content all follows one consistent brand. If you can get all those components together, it is just going to be like boom, 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 just meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Because outreach itself without the profile is not going to get you anywhere. So, I mean, your main area is your messaging with it, your targeting, and then after that, it is your profile. Because on LinkedIn, it's unlike things like Facebook and Instagram. A lot of the times they may just see it and reply to you. On LinkedIn, the first thing they do when you send over a connection request or a message is go straight to your profile.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make sure that that profile is stellar. And that's why with our system, they actually, right now, they're actually getting a year worth of training on top of it, where we actually work through all your messaging and your search and your profile. So we're helping them kind of create that whole union between it. And then it's just boom, 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 boom. You just start seeing meetings flow in.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really solid point. I mean, obviously, it's automation, it's a system. It will work if all the elements are there. Now, if you're missing a headshot, if you're missing a banner, if you have anything on your LinkedIn profile that's not filled out, you're doing yourself a disservice by using this platform, because all you're doing is calling out to the things that are not right with your platform, which is not going to help with your conversion. So I'm happy that you brought that up. So like just talk about that. Like with that, are you guys partnering with, like, I've interviewed some people on this show that are LinkedIn specialists. They help people with their profiles. They help people with their imaging. They even help people find the right photographers to get the right headshots and the right copy. Are you guys partnering with those people to then actually help them grow your platform and grow their business?
Yeah, so for companies like that, we're actually working with them. We've created a white label system where they can actually pick it up and rebrand it with, and that way, by doing that, we're going to see a more consistent flow of clients that come in from our end user. Meaning, so by partnering with those companies, we're basically just going to see white paper after white paper of more and more people hitting the 7-figure mark. Now, we offer more a scaled down approach within our system, but we are partnering with companies just like that with that white label, so that they can now provide the software with the training and with all that system in place.
So, I mean, with that training, are you talking about like videos? Are you talking about like step-by-step tutorials? Like, I mean, what kind of training are you talking that comes with this platform?
The training that comes with it currently, now that is going to come with a cost in the future. So I just want to put that out there, since this is a podcast and they may listen to this 8 months from now. Right now, it's a LinkedIn. They get to join, or I'm sorry, it's a Zoom. They get to join a Zoom session. I'm going to do a training session that will be live, and they get 30 minutes of questions. And that happens every week.
That's definitely cool. I mean, it goes hand in hand with being a founder of a SaaS-based platform. I mean, that's just, in today's world, that's just something that you have to do to not only get the word out, but to also get the users to use that platform. So I want to talk about your users, for example. Now, I would say that you're probably more B2B, but there's some B2C in there as well too. So how do you see it working for the B2C demographic?
The B2C demographic is all kind of dependent on who they are and when they're going after it. We've got some like people that are like insurance providers, and what they're doing is they know specific industries, specific positions that they've had before, and then they just hone it down to their city and the specific title, because they'll know around about what that person makes, and they can go after people like that. But there's also local groups for it too, where you can actually hit people, where you may be able to find, or if you're selling a product line, like one of them was selling a product line that has like jerseys. And for that, you can go to like something like a Chicago Bears. Like they'll have all these like fan type groups that are in LinkedIn, and you can directly target those groups. You can also target events with it. So depending on what you're offering, if it's an insurance and there's somebody else running the insurance event, then you can go into that list, and as soon as you register, you have access to all the members of that event. So then if it's like an insurance event and you have all these consumers going to it, you can actually kind of poach that event's group set, so, and message them. So there's several ways that you can do it within it. It's not every B2C that it'll be effective for, but there are lots of ways to leverage it even for B2C.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, like we're giving the platform praise because obviously it deserves it, but there's always the naysayers or the big elephant in the room. And I would start off with the algorithm of LinkedIn potentially blocking profiles. Like, what kind of limitations or what kind of like stoppers, or have you put into the program to allow the user to not essentially get blocked by LinkedIn?
Okay, so number one, we put in bumpers like the message limits as well as the connection limit. You can only go to a certain degree. If you haven't used LinkedIn before, we have a warm up feature that's completely randomized. And what that means, it may send between 3 and 6 today, and tomorrow it may increase to 4 to 7. And so it makes it more like human behavior in the way that it operates that way. Also, all of the messages are randomized on when it sends, again, more like human behavior. And we're always testing, especially me, I'm always testing the borderline. Sometimes I get myself in LinkedIn jail because I will test the algorithm so our users don't have to
Mhm.
go down. And so I do things like that to always make sure, because when their algorithm changes, we want to change it in the software immediately and create that bumper so that we don't have to worry about our users getting put in LinkedIn jail.
Hmm. So, I mean, like finishing that statement on LinkedIn jail, like your platform says very clearly that you could generate up to 20 meetings per week on autopilot. So I would think that's based upon like the LinkedIn profile, the LinkedIn limitations, right?
Yep.
So are you guys looking into, like you said, Facebook and other platforms? That number should be variable on other platforms. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where you take a 20 meetings a week to 40 meetings a week to 80 meetings a week to holy crap, my business is scaling so fast. I need to hire more people.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at with advertising dollars increasing exponentially, your databases for emails increasing exponentially. I mean, having some standardized variable costs that can bring you in X amount of appointments or meetings a week is just going to be more and more needed, because otherwise it's just going to bankrupt you, keep with the costs continuously increasing.
Hmm. So I mean, you're talking so like I mean, like I could tell that you breathe and sleep and eat this, like you do this all day, every day. And so I want to kind of talk about like on the other side of you, right? I mean, for the listener that they're hearing you, they're saying you're a tech, but at one time you were doing some singing as well. Like I've seen some videos with you on Facebook that you was doing some singing. I want to kind of talk about that. Like, did you ever want to get into music, or was that just something that you just did to pass time by?
Boy, you do your research. So I've been I've got into music several times. I've actually been a touring. I had a hip hop band back when I was like 18 or 19, and we toured the country. And then also had a Christian rock group where we did some minor level touring with some big bands and stuff as well. So I don't know. I've always had music in my heart a bit. I still write songs. I'm actually in the process of writing a few different Christian contemporary songs right now, and I'm getting them ready to actually test them within services. So yeah, I've just always been in music. I don't know why. Heck, before this meeting, I was jamming out music for the last hour, so I was getting all pumped up for the meeting, just
Nice,
jamming out. You just
nice.
can't beat it. I love music, so yeah.
I mean, yeah, and part of the due diligence that I've done, I also realized that you worked with some producers as well, and I think it was a image with you in the studio. I think his name was JD, the producer, and you like so that's the first time that I found out that you were even into music. So again, like with the networking that you have done, have you kind of reached back into that networking at all, or are you kind of completely using LinkedIn for a new complete demographic versus leveraging your old black book per se?
I've used a little bit of my old black book through this process. Some of it doesn't make sense yet. We
Mhm.
are going to test some of the things where I will go back through my old black book. There's some things I'm going to be working on for artistry where you can actually help book a tour through LinkedIn by utilizing the software, where it can go after the booking manager. So I'm actually going to be testing a few things like that. And then once I prove them out, then I can go back to that side of my old contacts. But yeah, having those old contacts are always great if you can find the exact fit
Mhm.
uh, that you have that you can present to them. But I know with my contacts, it's more like I've got to prove it before I can bring it back to them. So just in the process of doing things like that where I can prove it. But yeah, I've got a bunch of music industry contacts, from former A&Rs to huge music managers to producers of big bands, that I'll definitely bring that back to once we get that solidified.
Very nice, very nice. So if I was to ask you to define yourself just by using 3 to 5 words, what would those 3 to 5 words be to define you?
Um, wow, that's a good one. I've never thought of this question before. Thanks for throwing me off. Uh, um, I would say enthusiastic, out of the box thinker, because I try to think of things that don't exist or redo things that are in the market all the time. So I think so far out of the box that it's like companies have never figured out how to do some of the stuff that I've done. So I guess that would probably be best fit for me.
Hmm. I could definitely see, I mean, you being an out of box thinker, and with being with that, I mean, you're innovative. And with innovation, usually there's always some kind of pushback. There's always some kind of negative, not to say that you're trying to be the first in the space, but there's always some naysayers, right? So I want you to kind of talk about on your entrepreneurial journey, like the hurdles that you had to overcome when you were saying that, hey, I'm going to be creating a platform. The first time you said it to someone or said it to a particular audience and you got that negative feedback, how did you overcome that?
That's definitely a tough one. It really, you gotta remember the vision that you have, and really you got to get down to the overall why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm,
And sometimes you may have to ask that question why 7, 8, 10, 15 times, and just keep asking yourself why to hone in on the specific why you're doing what you're doing. If you can hone in on the why, it can help you overcome that. But yeah, in the entrepreneur journey, you're going to see it over and over and over again, because most people are kind of brainwashed into the work a 9 to 5, and entrepreneurship is not that, and you don't make money day one.
hmm.
You're just going to get a lot of naysayers, and you just got to remember your why.
So, like, I mean, the fact that you ended it, I mean, that just peel back that onion. So, in the case of what you're doing, you're talking about nonprofits, you're talking about music, you're talking about your love for technology. What is your why?
My ultimate why is, it would be kind of a twofold. Number one would be to create the financial stability for my life, family. And then the other why is to be able to give back. And that's a big part of it, is with more money, you can actually get into more opportunities for giving back, and not just investing into nonprofits, but investing directly into products that can help people.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where we're going with this. At the point we cross over the million a year, we'll start giving back 10%.
Hmm.
And so we'll be building out tech and things to help with like mental health and substance use, which will be our first area that we're going to address. But we'll start building things out like that and just giving it away to communities to help them overcome these things. So that's the biggest why I think I have, is just to be able to give back and help people.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And just based upon that answer, like every time someone gives an answer and they put something detailed in it, and you said substance abuse and mental, right? I mean, like for me, I would say I want to give back to stroke survivors, something along those lines. So I want you to kind of talk about why did you pick that particular selection to help and give back to?
So most of my life, I struggled with mental health conditions from being younger. And at about 19, I ended up on pain pills, and then started abusing pain pills. And before I knew it, I was a heroin addict. So I went through 10 years of struggling with heroin addiction and mental health problems, to basically becoming completely homeless, losing everything that I'd built up over the years, and having to start from scratch again. So I want to give back to that community because of what I personally went through.
Hmm. So, I mean, like talking about like nonprofit, I guess in that, if you had to like name a nonprofit, or are you thinking about potentially when the company gets big enough, creating a nonprofit to actually then take capital from the software and donate to? Have you thought that down far the road yet?
Yeah, we're really going to start a different division of the company where it will just be focused on building product lines for those industries, and make it completely free. No, most of the time people say it's free, but they're really going after Medicaid dollars and things like that. I don't care about any of that because they have stipulations. I want to just give back things that I know will actually benefit others. And so we'll just start a second division of the company that will do nothing but use that money where it's 100% profiting them. And there's no worried about money coming in, going to salaries and different things. We'll cover all those things and make sure that everything is completely free for the end customer.
So I mean, with that, does your team kind of follow the same like state of mind state that you're in? Obviously, we want to build this platform, we want to make it successful, we want to make enough revenue to then donate to help other people. Are you finding like-minded individuals to help you run the company?
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, most people, everybody's in the company now has had some struggle with at least mental health. And in today's world, we probably see like 90% of people since post pandemic has had some type of mental health issue since. So yeah, it resonates with everyone that's actually in the company itself. And we definitely make sure we're finding like-minded people on the upper level of the company that can help manage it.
Mhm.
Because giving back is my why. If you destroy my why, I have no reason to do what I do.
Hmm. So I mean, with that, I mean, obviously you talk about the upper level of the company, and I think that's how we got connected was through one of your partners that's in the company, Phil. So like, how did Phil find you, or did you find him? Like, what's the story behind how you guys even got? You guys been together pretty long at this point in time, and building to where you are right now. It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah, so it actually started with the whole Kick It Tour thing. I reached out to somebody that knew him, that brought him up, and he helped me kind of do some of the stuff with the Kick It Tour on raising money for the last event we did. And ever since, I started with the entrepreneur vision, and he's had an entrepreneur heart as well. And we just kind of built a friendship around it and ended up starting companies together from that point.
It's definitely, I mean, if it works, it works. I mean, for sure. So, like going back on the topic of time traveling, right? I mean, obviously, you've had your ups and downs, you've had your hurdles, and you kind of disclosed some of those things on this episode so far. If you had an opportunity to go back at any point in time and sit down with your younger self for 5 minutes and give yourself some words of insight, when would you go back to, and what would you say to yourself to help you to become who you are a lot faster?
I'd probably go back probably around the 1819 mark, somewhere in that vicinity, and basically push into my brain the stop having the shiny spoon syndrome.
Mm,
Because that was one of the biggest issues that I had is I would get in a company, I would create it early on, and then I'd get bored with it, see something else, and then move on to that, and nothing truly became to its full potential because I was so all over the place with looking for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I would just tell myself to just focus in on one thing that you really love to do and make that your sole mission. Because there's no telling where I could be today if I would have had that same mindset.
What I would think that mindset is probably ingrained in you to like the hurdles happen, but overcoming those hurdles. So I want you to kind of talk about you as a kid growing up and what kind of household did you grow into? Was it a household full of entrepreneurs and business owners, or was it more so like hardworking individuals? And then you wanted to kind of be the first in the family to step forward and become an entrepreneur?
My family was actually none of the above. Both my dad worked hard, but he was an alcoholic, and my mom was addicted to drugs as well. So I basically grew up in a household where I had two parents that were both addicted to different things, and saw their struggle day after day. Until I got to the point that I moved in about 13. I moved in with my grandma, and she was kind of the rock that kind of helped hold everything together. But yeah, the first 13 years were crazy and terrible, and wondering if we had the food for the next meal. Much less worried about like entrepreneurship or really working. I mean, I had a terrible environment to grow up in, so it didn't really lead me towards it, but it gave me some of the why of for the family and making stability. It gave me the why that I don't want to ever live that way.
Mm. So like just fast forward and flip it on the other side. Like now that you're older and you said the key word of family a few times, have you established a family? Do you have kids now?
I don't have kids now, but I've got someone that will be getting married probably
Mm,
in the next year, and then we'll start that whole side of it. I'm trying to build up the business enough where I can support that side first, before I really get married and start having the kids. But
Mhm.
just coming back, I want to have that stability for my child. I don't want to have to make them go through what I went through.
Got it. So, I mean, with that, do you think as an entrepreneur that is a part of a startup, and again, a startup that you're pushing forward, and you're going into a huge market, right? You're going into like LinkedIn and networking and lead generation. How are you currently then managing or working with your significant other to then manage your day to day, like spending time with her, but at the same time spending enough time with the business?
It was just about full designation. There are certain times of the day that she gets my time. There are certain times of the day the business gets my time, and that doesn't change. There is I make sure that I manage each parts of that, because what I've learned, if I'm trying to do business while with her, I'm not really with her. Like, one thing gets your focus, and that's it. So what I try to do is break it apart into different segments of the day where everything gets my full focus when I'm on it.
Mhm.
And that's been the best thing. But she's very understanding of the business thing, and she's fine to let me do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you don't have time management, that makes it very difficult.
I mean, I'm happy you brought up time management because I mean, obviously, when you're talking about building out a platform, there's usually multiple sides to it, right? There is the engineering side behind the scenes, the coding, the development, the strategy, the platforms, the hosting, all that stuff that the average person has no clue about. And then on the other side is the usability. Like, what is the experience like? What's the conversion? What's the return of investment? And from based upon talking to you and working with you, I can see that you're jumping between both sides of the coin. So I want to kind of talk about like how does that transition from you dealing with being your own avatar, testing out the system, and then taking that content and then making the changes behind the scenes to make that user journey a lot more friendlier.
So a big part of the development, once you get your MVP in the market, you have people testing it. Is what I do is we spent quite a bit of time with each one of our user base. We've
Mm,
seen what problems they're having, what struggles that may happen from it, and then started really analyzing. Like, for us, we got to analyze also LinkedIn and where they're going with the platform and the restriction levels and things like that. And we had to kind of pair those all together and come up with split second decisions on how do we change the software, how do we change the front face of it, the
mhm,
web app side, how do we change the extension side, and just kind of build around that, and went through the process flow of how that would look differently than the current process flow, and then basically test it out with people and see what they like about it, what they don't like about it, then go back to the dev team and say, hey, we need to change it this way, not that way, and then have them change it up. So I mean, it's just a back and forth between customer and customer and dev, until customer is like, this is great.
mhm, mhm. So I mean, obviously, with that, I mean, some companies may take 10 years to actually produce a product. Ideally, if you can do it in less than a year to kind of get to the beta testing and test the market out. I think you're more on the latter, right? I mean, how long did it take you from the initial concept, the initial meeting, to having a viable product in the market today?
um 3 to 4 weeks, concept to market in 3 to 4 weeks.
So
Yeah, I mean,
I want,
we really cut down and really, streamline that process.
and I want the listener to think about that. I mean, obviously, like I think some people they overthink, right? But again, you have like a little bit of development, so you can kind of patchwork some know who to hire to kind of build it out. But it just say if someone that has no tech background, what would be their first step to kind of figure out how to then create their first SaaS-based platform?
To be honest, start reading books about computer science. I mean, if you're non-technical, you've got to understand computer science. You've got to understand the basics of what they're going to do. Otherwise, you're going to spend a boatload of money. And trust me, we have spent a boatload of money getting to the point where I know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Now I'm going to try to tell you a $500,000 secret. Learn computer science before you get into it, because that's really going to help the process. If you just go in with a development team, say, hey, I want this, they're going to build it the way they want it. They're not going to streamline it. You've got to understand what to tell the development team to create it the way that you want it. You can't just say, I want this to do this.
Mhm.
you're going to get a shoddy product that doesn't work well. You're not going to know how to interview developers to see who knows what about the development side, who can actually fit. Like for this project here, yeah, it's 3 to 4 weeks to get to market. I interviewed 250 programmers overseas. I had to set up interviews with these people and go through every aspect of it to see where their knowledge base was, what was their portfolio look like, how are they like to deal with, what would it be like when I ask these types of questions that are hard that they may not want to answer. And I had to do a lot of work to get to the right team that could produce like this. And so if you don't have that understanding of computer science, it's going to be rough. I mean, I don't have the degree in it. I just did a lot of study on it.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to I think of a characteristic of who you are. I think that you're 50% analytical, 50% creative, but you're a big action taker, right? You don't hesitate on time. You want to kind of see how fast you can do something and do it effectively, right? And again, you can correct me if I'm wrong in anything that I just said, but that's what I get from knowing you and been around you for a period of time. So I want to kind of flip this a little bit. Now, you said books, and it's kind of like a good segue. Like, what books would you want to recommend that you recall reading that helped you to understand computer science the way you do now?
So I mean, a lot of people may start at the book level. I may have, I would say most people need to start at just basic computer science 101s that you would get at like a college level and read through it to understand it. I'm crazy. I work backwards. So I looked at crazy technologies out in the market, especially things that had colleges that wrote reports on it, and I actually learned it from the PhD level down. So I work backwards. When most people work forwards, I work backwards. So I try to find out the most crazy creative article, and then I'll study and break down the article so that I understand multiple components of what they're talking about and how they actually work together. But I would suggest most people would probably want to start like a 101 type of book from like a college setting. My brain works different. I have to go from the top level down.
So, I mean, obviously you had enough experiences and you had enough successes to where, have you ever thought about then creating and publishing your own book or your own how-to nonfiction to help people to do what you're doing, or to at least follow in your footsteps?
Yes. I'm a terrible writer, but yes, I have thought of it. We'll have to bring in somebody to kind of help put the pieces together. But yeah, definitely. There's several books that I think that I'll probably end up writing. Everything from the homeless drug addict to a CEO of a startup company, and telling the full story, all the ins and outs, all the crazy things that's happened that led up to that, and kind of discuss how I think like addiction itself actually helps inspire and helps push me forward within business, and how I reuse how that bad thing is actually I can use for good, for my benefit, to help me increase in business, all the way to books on the how-tos of how to run a startup without being bootstrapped, without ever needing venture capital. Yeah, there's probably several books in me for the future.
Well, I think that's another good door that you just opened up about addiction, right? I mean, obviously, once you're addicted to something, that's not something that just generally goes away. But if you can substitute it with another addiction, a positive addiction, that's when you kind of see that growth. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that for you, you went through one addiction and you switched to addiction for computers and for strategy and for marketing and for development and moving towards success versus the negative place you were in earlier in your years.
Right. It's to a degree. I mean, first you've got to basically kill the old neural pathways that exist within your brain. So that means you got to continuously, for 6 months to a year, do something very different than what you did. You have to start analyzing things like, when a trigger happens, how to revert from that trigger and not feed into that trigger. Because everything we do in life, it's not just addiction, but everything we do, there's triggers that come around it. They can be good, they can be bad, they can be moderate. I mean, if you ever heard a song that you dance with your old middle school or high school girlfriend, and it comes on the radio, and you come back to these thoughts, that's a trigger. We all deal with triggers. We talk about it more within like the addiction side of this trigger, then starts this circle of chaos. Well, you've
Mhm.
got to make sure that you break that circle of chaos. That means that when this happens, you've got to make an outward decision that I'm going to do this instead. And basically, what happens is that neural pathway starts dying off. Um, what you get to do with like how addiction then feeds into entrepreneurship itself is once I get the addiction tendencies, like now if I want to understand how this new type of software works in the market, that's when I start like a PhD article on how the systems work. But then I become addicted to that article. Like I
Mhm.
literally can't stop till I understand it. Or if I come up with a vision of how do I bring down operational costs so much that we can build out products quicker and make them more affordable than anyone else in the market and still be more profitable
Mhm.
from the market side. I can't stop till I figure it out. And so that's where you can start utilizing things like that. And I've also got ADHD. It's now I can focus generally on like two tasks if I'm doing the same type of thing. I can do two things at once. So I could be having a conversation and writing part of an article. I could be having a conversation and also dealing with dev. I could have a sales conversation and a development conversation at the same time. So I've learned where I can actually control the things that they consider like mental illnesses, but actually control them for my good. And I don't take any medication for these things anymore at all. I just learned how to control them for my benefit.
Well, I mean, I had an episode one time to where someone has said like attention deficit disorder is essentially it makes it into a superhero, right? I mean, it's not like it's a disease. It's just you have to know how to funnel it and use it. And once you know how to use it, like you have an advantage, which most people don't have that same advantage. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely gives you an advantage. You just got to know how to use it, and don't listen to all the people in the world. It's like, hey, just take this medicine because you've got this disease. Like, I think a lot of us, I think that we were ingrained with something within us, within our DNA, that made us who we are for a reason and a purpose.
Mhm.
And I think that things like that are ingrained in us for a reason and a purpose. We just got to understand how to use it.
Hmm. I mean, I think it's phenomenal that you ended that last sentence with use it, right? So I mean, obviously understanding the tools of the trade and building and development, I want to kind of talk about like the underlining behind your platform. Like there's so many different things that you can kind of build software in, right? There's Python, there's all this AWS stuff that you can kind of build things on. There's even PHP. So I want you to kind of talk about like what tools do you use to maintain and grow and develop the platform that you've developed on a day to day?
Um, that's a kind of a harder question. I mean, because every system we're going to build will have different aspects to it. I mean, when you're using like bot type systems, you're definitely your mix of JavaScript and Python when you get into it. So that's kind of standard when you're creating like Chrome extension type of bot type systems. So really, it's just really depends on what we're developing and what stack we use and how that and what part of that stack makes an advantage. It's just really analyzing that and analyzing other software that's in the space that you may be able to utilize for it. Like we're right now we're going through some understanding of like what is everything that social can track and basically looking at all the tools in the market and how they're going to track them and basically figuring out how to remove some of the areas that you can actually track the system. So then with that, I have to break down every part of a the different systems in the market. I got to break apart what they're using, and then we've got to analyze how those systems interact with it. It's the same way with other things as well. Is when you're going to build something out, you start breaking down multiple systems. How do they work? What stack were they built on? What's the good things? What's the bad things about each one? And then from that, come to a consensus of how do I take some like hybrid model of this and bring it out to market. And with this hybrid model, I can cut costs by blah, 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 whatever that number is that you would cut costs by rolling out this hybrid model and what would the effectiveness be versus this. So it's really just taking apart, different things in the space. You don't just come up with something and it's like, I'm just going to build it. Like I get really into the weeds of looking at everything else that's in the market and kind of breaking apart the good and the bad.
Hmm. So I mean, I want you to talk to the listener, right? And essentially, I want you to look at this as an opportunity for you to kind of talk about how your platform can help the listener get to the next level. So I want you to formalize this in the words of insight, words of wisdom through your platform. How is it going to help the listener get to, like you said, the seven-figure mark, if that's possible?
Well, it's going to increase their outreach efforts. I mean, it's quantity. It's all about quantity because it's the right product at the right time. That's how you sell something. Right product, right time. Right service, right time. And so what happens is you need to get in front of people quickly. And if you identify the right audience that needs it, it's going to consistently grow your company. The interesting side with this is it's not time consuming. Once you get the system set up, all you do is a search and let it go, and then it just works in the background for you. So it's helping that outreach happen over and over again. It's getting you in front of the right people, and one of those people is the right person at the right time. And so that's going to automatically grow your audience with it, as well as you'll be able to use content and other things to retarget that audience, or you'll be able to go back to that audience again and run another campaign with that audience,
Mm.
and then just keep selling and selling and selling. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to help you reach your audience quicker, more efficiently, and help you start generating meetings and sales off of it.
Great. So, I mean, obviously, part of the reason why I wanted you on this show was not only that I'm using your platform and I like to interview founders of particular software. So it kind of gives me a little inside view. And like you said, I was one of the beta testers for your platform. And because of that, you guys put together something for our listener, right? So you have like a free LinkedIn assessment. So you want to go ahead and talk about how do they get in contact with you? How did they get access to the actual assessment?
Yeah. So how do you get that is www.easypipeline.com/boss uncaged APPT, short for appointment. Are you going to also have that link available as well?
Yeah, it's in the notes and also the description for the videos and everything else right now.
Okay, cool. So yeah, if you go there, there's two things that we're giving away. Number one, everyone can get a free LinkedIn assessment. What that means is we'll go through your messaging, we'll go through your headline, your photos, and your outreach methodology, and we will give you an actionable plan. Everybody that listens to this can sign up to that. It's free. You get a 15-minute session. Number two, what you can also do is we have a drawing, and it's just for this show only. So you can sign up and you'll be able to win a free license of the software and one-on-one coaching to actually help you build it. So a done with you system to actually help you build the model that we can start producing. So that's another thing that one person will win as well. So if you go to that website, you sign up for it, you'll be able to get the opportunity to have both of those things, and everybody gets something for free. You can't miss that. You can't beat that. So go there, get signed up, and you can get a free $500 session with us to help you streamline your LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I definitely say if you and if you're listening right now, go ahead and bookmark the link. Once again, the link is easypipeline.com/boss uncage APPT. So again, like you get access to the freebie, you get access to actually having information about your LinkedIn profile. And to the point that we made, like in the first 10 minutes of this episode, like your LinkedIn profile may not be ready for this software. And like instead of actually going into the software blindly, at least let someone give you an assessment to let you know what you need to do and then use the software so you can get the best use out of it. So with that, I want to kind of go into a bonus question, right? And I always say this is my signature bonus question. I love asking this question. I pretty much ask it to everyone that I interview. If you had an opportunity to spend 24 hours with anyone, dead or alive, right? It could be someone from the past, someone present, uninterrupted for the 24 hours, just you and that person. Who would it be and why?
I would probably say Nikola Tesla. The dude was such a genius and so well past his time. I would love to have just spent 24 hours with him because, I mean, what he knew, the stuff he figured out, the things that are still being used in today's world from Nikola Tesla is just amazing. So I would pick Nikola Tesla.
Okay. Got another bonus question for you. So obviously doing my due diligence, I seen some pictures with you in front of Superman. I seen some pictures with you. I think you were dressed up maybe as Batman. So if you could be a superhero, who would it be and why?
I mean, I guess it would probably have to be like Batman because he also had a successful business, and then he helps people out at night, and that's kind of our ultimate goal is to be able to build it out where we have a successful business and also can help people.
Hmm. Hmm. I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, like I've always used to ask that question as part of like my recruiting is like, if you could be a super person, who would it be and why? And the usual is 50% Superman, 50% Batman. And it also kind of tells me the characteristics of the individual. Like the Batman are usually people that are innovative, right? People that are kind of leveraging the fact that they're not superheroes, but they can work towards being it, versus Superman is pretty much invincible, right? So I definitely appreciate your answer. And then last but not least, I want to know out of all of your achievements, out of every single one that you've had, obviously you're talking about dozens of achievements. Which one is your most significant one to date?
Uh, overcoming overcoming addiction and not struggling with addiction anymore, I would say would be the number one accomplishment I've ever done.
Hmm. Yeah, I could definitely say that. And the fact that I would say if I could add on to that, it was turning that addiction into something positive. It's not just about overcoming it. It's about, okay, I overcame it. Now what? And you definitely figured out your now what, and you have purpose and you have why.
Yeah, it's weird because your mind, once you truly make that decision, like I can't even drink alcohol anymore. Like my body doesn't even react the same way because once you move it from there, your
Mhm.
body acts so different, and it's so weird that your mind can control your bodies like that.
Mhm.
But it's just amazing to see that I still see people that I used to run with years ago still struggle with it, and
Mhm.
today I don't have any struggles with it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely phenomenal, man. So going into closing of the Boston Cage podcast, traditionally, I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the show. So now Boston Cage is officially yours. You're now the host. I'm your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
All right, so what made you start your business?
I mean, it goes back to 2000, man. It was just kind of like trying to figure out, like, I was 50% creative, 50% analytical, and I just knew, like, in 2000 that I wanted to have a business. Like I was in school, but I knew I wanted to have a business. And early on, working for someone was not really in my equation, considering in my high school years, I gotten fired from quite a few different companies for obvious reasons because I'm an entrepreneur.
What's your why?
Oh, my why is something that's simple, but something that I live to every single day is like doing these interviews is part of leaving behind a legacy, not just for myself, but for, like you said, you're eventually going to probably have a kid. What would it be like for your kid to find this video or to find this podcast 20 years down the road? And what you're saying right now helps inspire them to become whoever they're going to be, and leveraging what you're saying right now becomes a passion for them later on. So I was like, okay, well, how do I do that at scale? Well, I need to interview more people. I need to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's why, like, every single day, I'm just trying to do more and more interviews with more leaders and more people that are in the industry of platforms and development and building things. Because again, we don't know how long we're going to be here. So by recording this, I'm documenting not only my story, but your story as well for the next generation.
What's the biggest struggle that you overcame?
Oh, shit. I would definitely say my stroke. I had the stroke in 2018, and it kind of put the reality in check for me to kind of reset. And I wouldn't be who I am, where I am, and doing what I'm doing if that stroke didn't happen. So I always say that when people are going through something much like you was going through addiction, when you get hit with those life hurdles, the second that you figure out how to overcome those hurdles is when you really become more of your true self. But unfortunately, some people it happens earlier in life, and some people it takes, decades before it actually happens.
So you could go back in the past and you could give yourself one piece of advice. What would that be?
I would go back to high school, actually. And to be very frank and very transparent, I would take more time diving into technology and figuring out that in an earlier day versus, drinking and having sex and cutting school and running around playing sports. Considering what I know right now and considering that technology was really up and coming in the 90s, I would have sat myself down and be like, dude, I know that you're having fun, but you're gonna have so much more fun if you just take some more time and dedicate it to understanding the philosophy of how technology really works.
Well, that's all I have.
Cool, cool. Well, I definitely appreciate it, and I think that you definitely brought a lot to the table today. And to your point about foundations and nonprofits, I think that if a company has that scope of a vision of a why, it's not just also helping people with leads and getting referrals, but then they'll know that this company, the goal and the purpose of it is to take some of that revenue and give back. Because again, you're not the last one to be in your seat. There's other people that's probably listening that may follow in your footsteps because of what you said today. So I definitely appreciate you, and I appreciate that.
Thanks. I enjoyed being on the show.
Great. S.A. Grant, over and out.